Yeah, this is BCFM's Live and Local with me, Tom Bigwood, here with you every Monday, right through until 7 from 5, and it's your drive time programme on community radio for our great city of England. And from one artist to another, Cliff Hanley. You might remember Cliff, one of the most innovative artists here in Bristol. He was back with us a few weeks ago talking about, previewing his mammoth tour over to Gaza and Palestine. He was part of a huge convoy that was going over from Bristol and all parts of the country. And I'm pleased to say that he's made it back safe and sound, and he's with us now to give us, I suppose, we've had the preview, Cliff, so we better have the review. How did it go, the trip? I mean, can you...
Hi, Tom. Well, the trip was not what we expected. Nothing ever turns out the way you expect it. I think the trip was more of an experience than actually being in Gaza itself. We were on the road for over a month, travelling through so many countries and seeing so many different kinds of weather, and learning to get on with each other, which we had to do very, very quickly. That was very important, that.
Yeah, so going back to the start then, Cliff, I suppose, you set off from Bristol. I mean, to go all that way by road is incredible. So you kicked off from Bristol, and what happened from there?
Of course, most of what we saw of the countries we were in was the road. We saw a lot of motorway and a lot of truck stops. We spent a lot of nights actually just sleeping in lorry parks, truck parks. So it was a really truck driving kind of life on the road, man. Occasionally we did get to meet people, though. The further south we got to meet, the more people we got to meet, and the more friendly the people got as well.
No, I'm no great shakes on geography, Cliff. What route did you take? Was it through France, I guess, Spain, or what was the route?
Yeah, France, Brussels, Luxembourg. The strange thing about going through the EU is that you don't actually see any borders. You might pass a sign which says, by the way, you've just been in Luxembourg.
Now, from the reports I've seen, Cliff, there was obviously it was people from all over the country, wasn't it, who joined this convoy, not just Bristol people, but a good number from Bristol people joined this national convoy, and it seemed that it all went pretty well until you got to Egypt.
That's right. It's basically a UK thing, and as you say, people from all over the UK, and of course there were plenty of people from everywhere else, Belgium, as far away as Iran, in fact, and America, and lots of people from Turkey. Yes, when we got to Turkey itself, it got to be very friendly, and by the time we got to Syria, it just turned into one great big love-in. I was interviewed by a guy on the Syrian border, and at the end of the interview he said, "I love you!" And I said, "I love you too!" Big hugs, big kisses. It got like that, it got more like that. That was just the beginning. Of course, once we got to Egypt, things got to be a bit different. The Egyptians are pretty much the same, on the same side as the Americans and the Israelis as far as Palestine goes. They tried very hard to make it impossible for us to get into Gaza, and they almost succeeded, but we got through in the end. We spent a couple of days holed up in this port in Egypt, waiting to get the okay to go ahead. And the first night we were attacked by a large bunch of riot police and some plainclothes thugs chucking rocks, and there was tear gas and rubber bullets later on. But just for no particular reason than just to make life difficult for us. But we got through that too, and it was marvellous to meet the people in Gaza. They were very glad to meet us, of course.
What was the reception like, Cliff, when you arrived in Gaza?
Needless to say, it was fairly ecstatic. We arrived in the middle of the night, though. We didn't get the big cheering crowds we'd been imagining. The sun wasn't shining. It was about 20 past midnight. It was a good deal quieter than we'd anticipated. We'd had a lot more noisy welcomes in places like Istanbul on our way south. But once the sun came up, it was quite different, and I was lucky enough to be able to meet a few guys I've been in touch with over the internet, some of the artists who are still working in Gaza and survive. And we made good contact. We spent a lot of time talking about what they do, what they plan to do, and about their aspirations for keeping in contact, for establishing contacts with artists in the UK, and especially Scotland, as they knew I was the artist from Scotland. And they'd all seen Braveheart. That's what they know about Scotland. I think they all identify with Braveheart to a good extent.
Were they surprised when you didn't have your blue face?
Well, I don't know if they expected the blue face. At least they didn't mention kilts. But we got on very well. I must shamefully admit I don't speak more than about half a dozen words of Arabic. Fortunately, they all speak probably better English than I speak myself. So communication wasn't that much of a problem, really.
How long were you actually in Gaza for, Cliff?
I think it was probably a total of maybe 32 hours. Of course, a lot of that we were actually sleeping. We arrived at 3 in the morning. And we had one day in which to move around and meet a few people, and then we were thrown out the following morning. I met the one artist I met was a guy called Majid Badra, and his brother, who's a student organiser. He organised the Peace March, which should have taken place the week before we arrived. And I also met the leader of the Palestinian People's Party, who came out especially just to meet me. He's about as famous as George Galloway. He's probably about as successful as George Galloway. His name is Bassam al-Sahi. His party is about as... I think they get about 3% of the votes in Gaza. That's pretty much the same as Galloway's Respect Party over here. But it just shows you that the political scene's a bit more complex than just the Hamas and the other bunch.
And what did they say about the stuff you brought, which I know included everything from hospital equipment to crutches to simple things like paper?
They were, needless to say, they were very grateful to see that 50 of the vehicles weren't allowed in by the Egyptians. The Turkish contingent took up on themselves to drive those up to other parts of Europe to deliver them to Palestinian refugee camps, so they weren't completely lost. They'll get to the Palestinians one way or another one. It was a very good day, though, heading everything over. It's a good kind of climax to the whole trip.
Now, Cliff, you're obviously one of the more prominent artists in our city, well known for your painting around various galleries in the city. You talked there a little bit about meeting aspiring artists over in Gaza. Could you relate to them more than some of the other people you met?
Well, in fact, as we were there for such a short time, I hardly met anybody else. I did meet those politicians and one or two artists. I think we probably talked politics more than anything else, and in general terms, just about the exigencies of day-to-day survival in Gaza. And one thing I must say about Gaza City, which is about all I saw of Gaza, is it's a beautiful city. You're used to seeing Gaza as just lots of very narrow passageways for filth and squalor. But in fact, it looks like basically a beautiful town. Broad streets full of trees and cafes. There's a lot of desperation and squalor as well. But it basically has what it takes to be a beautiful town. Mind you, the night I was there, 11:30, we were nattering away. My host, Majid Badra, the artist, and his father, and all of a sudden there was a a couple of bombs fell a couple of gardens away. We just kept on talking because it happens all the time. That's just normal life.
It's an incredible story to hear from that, Cliff. What would be the overall memory that you're going to take away from that whole experience? Well,
I've met so many wonderful people. The memories of love, I guess. That's what it boils down to.
Well, I'll tell you what, Cliff, thanks ever so much for coming in to BCFM's Live and Local to relive some of those memories, still fresh in the mind, no doubt, and hope to catch up with you soon again, Cliff, whether it's to do with another mammoth trip or perhaps one of your art exhibitions. I really appreciate you coming in this evening.
My pleasure. Well, that was recorded just a few days after a flight out of Egypt. It was difficult to evaluate such a kaleidoscope of experiences so soon after they'd happened. There's only one thing I would add to that, and that's that the Egyptians I was talking about were the dictator Mubarak and his minions. the Egyptians, the ordinary people in the street, are very happy to say we're very much on the side, we're very much in support of us.